topic is self-worth. And so much of uh, our sense of ourselves is influenced by externals, and we're going to talk about the balance of internal and external, and how that shapes our sense of ourselves. But before we get started, let's just take a couple minutes to get present, and let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it, and imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your organs, all your cells, bringing vital life energy into every portion of your body. And as you exhale, exhale any stress and tension. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And this time, imagine sparkling, brilliant light just illuminating every portion of you, your molecules, your electrons, and connecting you with the world beyond. And now exhale and relax your shoulders, relax your neck and your back. And let's gently press our palms together, softly, softly rub your fingers against your palms and feel that sensation, feel that tickling, that tingling, and the delight of being present here in the physical body. Welcome, welcome. It's great to be with you. We're talking today about self-worth and external versus internal. So much of our, I think the inclination is to evaluate ourselves based on externalities. So self-worth can be tied into things we own, things we have, things we desire, or things we don't have. So we can value ourselves by saying, well, I don't have money, so I can't be worth much. I don't have a home of my own, so I, making value judgments, and in this case, literal value judgments on ourselves based on external things, whether it be a job or possessions or achievements. And what I think is really in calling for a dramatic paradigm change in good morning, Dido. So glad you're here. What I believe is calling for a profound paradigm change, shift, is the recognition of our worth without having to look to anything external, like that we are worthy, we are intrinsically, innately worthy. And when, just by virtue of the fact that we're here, and people put other people down and say that person's worthless, or I've heard people refer to other people as a waste of oxygen. It's really quite remarkable the way that we interact with ourselves and with others, and in around this sense of worthiness, and certain people being worth more than other people. And where that comes from, I think, is certainly it's a mixed bag. One is from context, right? So this person is worth more than that person because they have more of a social influence, perhaps, might be a judgment. Or this person is worth more than that person because they own a company, and that company is producing something that's essential. And through these COVID times, we've looked at essential workers. And what's interesting to me is, valuing people who are essential workers, certainly, but these people that we have considered essential workers are traditionally people that have been on the lowest end of the pay spectrum in our culture. And so I think we get to really look at how we are calibrating value and worth, and to find a place within ourselves that is in recognition that we don't there's nothing that we need to do or have in order to establish our self-worth and our worthiness, that we are innately, intrinsically worthy. And the way that our culture is set up, we evaluate. Good morning, Tammy. Welcome. We're talking about self-worth and how our culture ingrains within us the inclination to evaluate ourselves based on externalities, and even accomplishments. So for instance, maybe if you're not evaluating somebody, including yourself, based on how much money you have or what job you have, maybe you're on a spiritual path, and you might evaluate worthiness based on how. Good morning, Andrea. Welcome. And Hope, hello, welcome. It's great to see you here. We're talking about worthiness and self-worth, and how we tend to calibrate our worthiness on all kinds of externals, and rather than allowing ourselves to live from an assumed worthiness, like it's intrinsic. We are innately worthy. So how do we get to that place? Because I know so many people who say, well, I'm not making enough money, so therefore, I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, I'm not acceptable, or I'm not okay. And when we get to a place of alignment within ourselves, the need for judging ourselves based on all these externals falls away. And as we allow ourselves to recognize that all of these externals are false metrics. So Tammy says, always measured by something, never content as we are. So the objective here is to move into being present to who we are without all those external judgments, like who we are as an expression of life, who we are as a part of this grander network of dynamic change and being. I think that a strong sense of self-worth comes from being in alignment with your heart and being willing to listen to our hearts. So and there's courage. It takes courage to listen to your heart, because not everybody is going to agree with you in your choices, you know. And sometimes what our hearts call for doesn't make external sense. So this was just speaking about, you know, self-worth. So I had a recent situation that I find kind of entertaining. So I have spoken about how I'm kind of looking at how I can design my life so it nurtures me. And I have a coaching practice, and I've decided to rework it so that I get to take a month off, have 3 months on with my clients, take another month off. So 3 months off a year, sort of on this on off and on phase. And I was telling a family member, and they were saying, well, can't you just, you know, arrange your schedule so that you have more time? I mean, why do you have to take that time off? And the idea, what was behind it, was that if I didn't take that time off, I would make more money. And that that was the metric to be making life choices about. And so what is so true for me, it was really sort of threatening to this other person that I would set up that kind of schedule for myself, or that kind of life for myself, because it flew in the face of the objective of accruing as much money as you possibly can. And that's in for me, in terms of self-worth, it's not having more money that matters as much as the quality of life that I have. And so, for instance, like this is a thing around self-worth. If we provide ourselves with a lifestyle that feels in alignment for ourselves, that's that's a way that we can acknowledge ourselves and our self-worth. You know, how else do we show our experience of self-worth? Is through self-care. I'm worthy of self-care, right? Um, and if we don't take care of ourselves, we don't have the capacity to function in the other functions that we have in our lives. So this idea of self-worth um, is really at the heart of so many things. It's at the heart of our communication, because when we feel centered and balanced in ourselves, we're better able to respond rather than react, you know, from a place of when I'm talking about self-worth, I'm not talking about puffing ourselves up. I'm talking about, you know, like being present and balanced in our sense of self. And so when we tell ourselves the terrible stories that so many of us tell ourselves, uh, we we are we are eroding our own sense of integration and balance and connection. And so to build self-worth, I believe we get to listen more closely to the desires of our hearts, and to find the expression in life that aligns with our core values. So self-worth is tied in with self-respect And we can make this it is an inside job. However, the necessity is going to be to turn the lens around from looking at all these external things that society says we should judge ourselves by, the things and the accomplishments. And if we can turn that lens back in on ourselves to give ourselves the gift of presence with our dreams and our desires and our passions and our experience, we transform the nature of our lives. And so much of this self-worth conversation is literally an internal dialogue, right? About telling ourselves that we're not worthy, that we're not good enough, that there's something wrong with us. And this goes into conversations that we've had earlier this week, where we can just allow ourselves to, and last week too, where we can allow ourselves to experience our lives or create a context for our experience where it's perfect, where we are in our perfect lives, where this moment in our lives, as wonderful or terrible as we might experience it, that it's perfect, and that we are moving through our lives exactly as we're meant to move through them. And that includes the moments when we stumble. It includes the times when we fall. It includes the times when we get back up. There is so much judgment that impacts our self-worth. And if we think about those words, self-worth, it is the perception, it is our own perception of ourselves. So we do not have to embrace or accept the assessment of the world, or the programming that we've had. Many of us grew up in situations where we were told we were worthless, or we were told we were not good enough, or we were told we were not smart enough, or not whatever. We were criticized, and we then internalized those criticisms and perpetuated them. I know that when I went away to school and I didn't have feedback from my family, I noticed that I had internalized a lot of that feedback. I had internalized a lot of that assessment of myself, and continued to repeat it to myself. So in this quest to establish a more solid sense of self-worth, one of the first things we get to do is to look at our conversations and what we're telling ourselves about ourselves all the time. And I am thinking of how for many, many years of my life, my conversation about myself was that I was broken, and that there was something wrong with me, and I was always trying to fix myself. And if we can come to a place of accepting that where we are is where we are meant to be in our life, that we're not, we shouldn't, the should word, we shouldn't be anywhere other than where we are right here in this moment, and gather the lessons that are available to us right here in this moment, and allow ourselves to be worthy regardless of our behavior. So we are not our behavior. We may do something that we feel shame about, or we feel disappointment about, for instance. We get to recalibrate and to reset and redirect. And rather than um, continuing to punish ourselves, we can use the experience of shame perhaps as a stepping stone to a place of self-forgiveness, and learn the lesson from that experience so that we don't repeat it, or that we become wiser around it. And so I'm wondering, for you, what is this story about self-worth? It's interesting to me that in becoming more balanced, it's the self-worth conversation isn't running in me. It became sort of irrelevant because I'm not feeling unworthy. And how did that happen? It happened by changing conversation internally is probably the number one thing that we get to shift in terms of self-worth, because by being aware of that conversation, that's the first step, obviously, because so many of us have these tapes running on and on and on and on, and we never are consciously attending to them, consciously aware of them. And because we're not consciously aware of them, they continue to have impact. When we become consciously aware of them, then we get to start shifting our behavior. So if you're experiencing issues around self-worth, look at the stories you're creating and get to create new ones. So I was talking with a client yesterday who said that they had experienced a period of feeling fearful, and they had learned of there was a Navy SEAL who had some peak performance kind of training, and one of the lessons from this person, the Navy SEAL, was when you have a story about fear, like when we're projecting forward into the future and we're feeling fearful, recognize that story that you're creating and create 3 stories of strength or 3 stories of triumph, because we are making up these stories. And the stories that we make up about the future or about our own worth are creating a context that we live into. So if we can take the reins of this story making and do it in a more deliberate fashion that serves us, and practice that, it will ultimately shift our inner experience. And rather than telling ourselves the things that we're not good at, how about telling ourselves the things that in our being, that our essence is in alignment with ourselves, rather than focusing on creating our sense of self-worth, like calibrating that against the money that we make or the things that we have. Those are just money and things. That has nothing to do with you and your value as a human being. And the stretch of mind here is to recognize that there's nothing that you have to do or be to be worthy and to have a sense of self-worth. There is nothing external that your self-worth or your worth, your value depends upon. You are worthy and valuable just as you are, just for being as an expression of life, that we all are here as part of that life. And I know that the struggle around self-esteem, I know there can be a profound struggle around self-esteem and self-worth. I know that. And we can move through it. We can move through it, and it takes deliberate attention. It takes deliberate attention to notice the stories that you're telling yourself. First of all, to notice them. Second, to realize that they're stories, they're not truth. And really what they do is they create a container, they create a box that we get to live in. And we can make a box that is so constrictive that we don't have room to breathe. We can make a box that is expansive, and we can keep expanding into it. And it all comes back to choice. And part of that choice is what we choose to believe. Okay, beliefs also are not true necessarily, you know, they're beliefs. And so the first step is awareness and paying attention to what was that I just said in my head. What was that? Where did that come from? And beyond that, what would be a better thing to be telling myself? So please, please, please do not look at yourself based on the externals. Do not judge yourself for being less than based on externals. What we want to do is to come from a place of being, from a place of presence, from a place of being aware of our inner dynamic, and then taking the reins. So I think that's it for today. I just want to say thank you so much for being here with me, and I am so grateful to share this time with you. And I'm Mira Rubin. This is The Core Connection, and I go live every weekday morning on the Enlightened World Facebook page, Enlightened World Network Facebook page at 9 a.m. Eastern. So I hope to see you here again. And in the meantime, check out all the other wonderful programming on Enlightened World Network. So with lots and lots of love and appreciation for you and your value as a human being here on this wonderful spinning planet together.